Hello and welcome to a live episode of Kerfefe Break on Deprogrammed with Carrie Smith. I'm your host, Carrie. Happy Friday the 13th. Happy October, the best month of the year. I hope you're having a good one. Welcome to any new people. This is a live show that we do on Mondays and Fridays at 1 o'clock Central Time, where we talk about what's in the news, what's on our mind, or sometimes we have a guest. We are going to have a guest today. He's going to be joining us in just a little bit. And his name is Obaid Omer. He is the host of the Dangerous Speech podcast. And it's been a couple years since I've talked with him. So he's coming on today to talk a little bit about current events, tell a little bit of his story as it relates to woke ideology, and to talk about current events and the left's response to events in Israel. So he'll be here with us shortly in about 10 minutes. Um, I wanted to first just welcome everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces in the chat. Hello, Therese. Hello, Vermont Cheddar. Um, we had a great day yesterday. I'll just tell you, some of you know, we've had a guest here from Germany, and he's young. It's his first time in America, first time in Texas. He's the son of our friend in Germany, and we've been trying to give him, with the time he's here, give him the best introduction to Texas and America and all the things that he's not going to get back home. And so we did. This week we took him to the gun range, shooting for the first time, barbecue, of course. We went to Rudy's. Um, he came to church with us. We hung out with friends. We've done Yesterday, he helped us with housework on this house we're renovating. That was great. And then we went to the rodeo last night in Waco. It was so much fun. They have a big fair and rodeo happening for a few weeks. And last night it was so much fun. I haven't been to a rodeo in forever. And it was his first time at a rodeo, and he was laughing. And he was like, "This is so dumb." I was like, "It's not dumb. These are actual skills that people need to have on a ranch. You know, football's dumb." Not really. I mean, you enjoy it, but what skill is there? Like, what skill from football do you need in real life? I mean, right? At least with rodeo, you're having fun, you're enjoying it, you're an audience member just like in football, but also the things they're doing are incredible. And these are real skills they need on a ranch, roping cows and being able to do the barrel racing, like run your horse around obstacles. And it was great. Oh, frying pans. But did you take your guest to Bucky's? Yes. So we had meant to go earlier and we hadn't had a chance. And so on the way to the rodeo, we stopped for gas at Bucky's, and I got a video of him just going in and taking it all in. And I heard some other people there who are not from Texas. And one of them, he was saying to his friends, he said, "I'd like to bring some of the men from my village here to see this." And the other person was saying, "This is all a gas station." It's just crazy. A wall of jerky, pickles, home goods. You can't really describe what Buc-ee's is. You just have to go and experience it. And more gas pumps than you'll ever see. So we did that. Yeah, and then we went to the fair and the rodeo. And if you haven't been to a rodeo ever, or if it's been a while since you've been to one, you should try and find one near you and go have a blast, because uh, it's just very enjoyable. They also have entertainment. Of course, there's the rodeo clowns, but they also had a horse acrobat there who she cut her teeth at Dolly Parton's Dixie Stampede, and she was basically standing on the back of 2 horses and riding them around the arena, and then she left and went backstage and came back with 4 horses, and then she was running them around fire and stuff and jumped over this thing of fire, and it was just it's hard to explain it. You just have to see it. It's just a feast for the eyes. It was a lot of fun. Also, they had a calf scramble. I don't know if you guys know what a calf scramble is, but it's where all the kids who are there, if they wanna participate, they come down and they give them these ropes, and then maybe let's say there's 20 kids, they'll let 10 calves go, and they have to run all over the field and try to catch the calf, and if they rope a calf, if they get the rope on it, then they win prize money. I think they were giving out hundreds of dollars. And so that was hilarious because, all the parents are cheering and there's kids diving for the cow and just eating it. Not just, in good fun. And one little boy he was holding the calf by the tail and couldn't get the rope around his neck, and this girl helped him, but so he ended up being one of the winners. But if you've never seen that, it was nice to see that through fresh eyes and just like how crazy this sounds. No, calf scramble, CALF. My pronunciation is probably bad. I'm going to write it out. A calf scramble, but they do give you money. And so it was just, I don't know, it was a lot of fun. I love this month. I love October. So, today we're going to be talking with my friend Obaid. Haven't spoken with him in a while. He'll be here in a second. I wanted to show you, though, before he gets here, just something I saw today. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but supposedly some terrorists declared that today is an international day of rage, a day of jihad, and that they're going to be committing terrorist acts across the world. And encouraging people to commit terrorist acts. And so I think you should definitely be aware and take precautions, but I don't think you should quit living your life. And I really liked this tweet I saw from James Woods, the actor, this morning. He said, I'm reading a lot of well-meaning advice about sheltering in place tomorrow because some dipshit halfway across the globe has declared a day of jihad. This is the United States of America, so I'll just be enjoying my day as usual, outside, in my hood, with extra ammo. And I thought that was good. That's a good attitude to have. That's what I was saying when I first heard about it is I hope nothing bad happens today. I'm sure there will be some incidents around the globe, but a lot of times these terrorists, I mean, what's the point of terror? What's the intention? It's of terrorists. It's to strike terror in the population. And so I kind of was thinking they're just trying to make people scared so that you never know when something might happen and you're always on alert. And hopefully that's what's going to happen today is it's all talk. So Bros and Bows says, let them try it in a small town, as Aldine would say. Right. John, my father taught me not to have a spirit of fear nor timidity. I love that. Yes. Okay. Uh, I should have said at the beginning, I usually forget. I still need to just record this and play it. If you like the show, if you're a regular viewer and you hang out here a lot, you can support the show at Locals, Subscribestar, or Patreon, or here at YouTube, you can become a member. Or if you can't do that and you want to help out, you can leave a comment. You can share the video. That helps our algorithm, and we greatly appreciate it. We appreciate all the support. This past Wednesday, if you missed it 2 nights ago, Mystery Chris and I did a show on true crime, and it was it's for our spooky October month, and we watched a lot of videos of some of the worst female murderers, criminals, to try and look at red flags and behavior. And we didn't even make it through all the women. So we're going to have to do a part 2 at some point. We had special guest, Tracy Barkley from Keto and Crime was on, and we went through some of the people that you are probably familiar with because their cases were in the news a lot, like Jodi Arias, Casey Anthony. But we also covered Diane Downs and some of these people who there's a lot of footage on them. And I think it's interesting and important. This is something I am interested in because a lot of these people I classify as cluster B. They classify as sociopaths or psychopaths or at least narcissists or borderline in some cases. And so I think it can be very instructional to watch the interviews, watch the police interrogations and the interviews they do with the press to see just how uh, what the red flags are in behavior for people like that. And so we did that, and we it was like almost 3 hours, 2.5 hours, and we didn't even get through the women. So we're gonna do another. We'll let you know when the part 2 is coming. Bros and Bows. I'm loving Spooky October. Wednesday was great. Well, thanks for hanging out. I find that stuff fascinating. We also and looked at some studies. We talked about how women are more interested in true crime than men and why that might be, some potential reasons of why that is. So, so go and check it out if you didn't get a chance to see it yet. We are going to be doing, I'll also make another announcement before Obaid gets here. We are going to be doing another of That Christian panel. We've done 2 so far, and I think we're going to try and make it something that we do every 2 weeks here on Deprogrammed. And it's a space for Christians to talk about pop culture, to review movies or TV shows, and also talk about cultural things that, our last one was about defining masculinity and femininity, and we were talking about Andrew Tate as sort of a springboard for that conversation. The first one we did was a review of the movie Nefarious, and so we're doing our third one coming up this coming week on Wednesday the 18th, and it's going to be at I believe we said 5 o'clock. No, 6 o'clock Central Time. 6 o'clock Central Time. We'll put out an announcement, but it's going to be some of the same panelists as before. So myself, Brahma Bull, Michelle from Force of Light, possibly Odin from Friday Night Tights and Odin's movie blog. He's going to try and join us again. And then we're going to have a special guest. Gothics is going to be here hanging out with us on Wednesday. So that's Wednesday the 18th. And then everyone's welcome, even though it's called That Christian Panel until we think of a better name. It's a place for people who are even curious or about what Christians think about something to come. And so we have atheists in the chat as well, and you guys are welcome to be there. But that'll be Wednesday with special guest Gothics. Cool. Is this on this channel? Yes, Bros and Bows. It's going to be here on the Deprogram channel, and you can watch the first 2. If you go to the main page of the channel, go to the playlist section, and there's a section it's called That Christian Panel. We've done 2 of them so far. We're going to be reviewing. If you want to watch it, I should say this. If you want to watch what we're reviewing before we do it, the subject of this panel is going to be the film Jesus Revolution. So Michelle from Force of Light has seen it. She recommends it. I know Gothics has already seen it. I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to watch it, of course, before we talk. But if you don't want to be spoiled and you want to come to the discussion and the review, you should watch it first. And it's called, again, it's called Jesus Revolution. It's a movie that's come out recently. Okay. What else is going on with you guys in the chat? I thought I needed 15 minutes to do announcements before he got here. So I said, why don't you come 15 minutes in? But I'm done with them already. So, hello. Just saying hello to people. Yeah. Here he is. Hold on 1 second. Let me add him to the screen. Obaid, if you're using a green screen, hello, sir.
Yeah, how are you? Oh, you want me to take my the thing? Okay.
Yeah, you're blending into the bricks.
Okay, hold on a second. How do I do that? See, I work in I. Oh, there we go. I work in IT, but I'm a complete and utter Luddite.
Which is funny.
How's
I'm a
that?
Luddite.
Is that better?
I think that's better. You have a warm glow on you, a light, but that's okay.
Well, yeah. Okay, look, I'm in the middle of just well, it's coming up on winter, so I'm just like putting away all my summer stuff and getting all my winter stuff out. But then at the same time, I was doing a little bit of work, and I haven't put my light shade back on because whatever, I couldn't be
It's
bothered.
fine. This is totally fine. It's
Mm.
so good to talk to you. It's been a while.
Yeah,
It's
it's
been
been
a
a long
couple of
time.
years.
Yeah.
You, for anyone who's not familiar, can you just tell people you're the host of the Dangerous Speech podcast? Can you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like you said, I host that podcast, Dangerous Speech, but um, I'm been living in Canada since '75. My family moved here when I was 6. Uh, I was raised in a Muslim family. I was raised to be Muslim around 16. I just couldn't believe it anymore. Then I left. Told my folks around 25. Um, And they were. I don't want to say they were okay with it, but like apostasy is punishable by death in 11 countries, I believe.
Wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
11 countries.
I'm pretty sure, like, I have family in Yemen, and I'm pretty sure that some of them, I have never met them, I've never spoken to them, so I might be stretching, but it'd be an easy guess to say that some of them would turn me in. Um, so uh, but yeah, like my parents, there's a couple of days of screaming and my mom crying and whatever, and but eventually they were just like, okay, just don't tell anyone. That was their thing. Um, but I just told them, like, I'm not going to lie. If anyone asks, I'm going to tell them straight out, like, but I won't go announce it. And yeah, that was
Is
it. Go
is
ahead.
that a can I ask a question about that? It's such a weird concept, I think, for Americans and maybe Canadians too, to think of living in a country where, like one of these 11 countries you mentioned, where it's punishable by death, where you don't have where the belief system is basically like you don't have free will. We don't want you to choose this of your own choice. The government's going to enforce it. Isn't that it's kind
O-
of crazy?
Okay, well, here's the thing, right? It's if you were born into a Muslim family and you leave Islam, then you're rejecting Allah, and that's wrong.
Mhm.
If you are of another faith, you were born into that faith, you're still wrong. So, I mean, they break it down by degrees. Uh, Pagans and adulterers, they're the lowest. I think they're even lower than atheists. Like atheists aren't, looked upon well. Obviously, you don't believe in anything. Um, then there's things like Hinduism and Buddhism and stuff like that. And then it'll get to, and, it says it straight out, like leave the people of the book for the end. So because I mean, they're the three Abrahamic faiths, right? So you leave them
Mhm.
alone. So in the mind, like, to generalize here, in the mind of a Muslim, you're taking a road trip from New York to Seattle, right?
Okay.
Uh, Christians got, sorry, Jews got as far as somewhere in the Midwest, we'll say a little bit past Chicago or something. Christians got to Denver, and Muslims made it all the way to Seattle.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty much it, right?
That's how
Because
they view it.
yeah,
Okay.
okay, but no, but I mean, it's like if you look at the stories,
Mhm.
uh, so it's Abraham in Judaism, Christianity, he takes Jacob up to slaughter, but then God turns him into a lamb. In Islam, it's he takes Ishmael up. So
Mm,
the roles of the brothers are reversed.
mm.
Okay, so, but it's still Abraham. They still have, Jesus is revered and worshiped. Well, no, I should say he's not worshipped; he's revered. And they talk about Jesus coming back. That's going to be the sign of the apocalypse. But he's not the Son of God.
The
Okay.
Muslims do, they talk about him coming back.
Yeah, like it's Moses is revered. The the parting of the Red Sea, like all of that, it's in the Quran. The flood. It was like I said. So from Adam and Eve all the way down, but they just don't stop at Jesus. They keep going up to Muhammad, right?
Mm,
And obviously, like I said, there are certain differences and stuff. So if you don't add in Jesus to Christianity, uh, you don't get things like render unto Caesar's that which is Caesar. You don't get things like let he who is without sin turn, cast the first stone. Like you don't get that. Like, don't get me wrong, I can still point out things in the New Testament that I think are, that can lead to violence and stuff. So, but still, I mean, Jesus did with some of those sayings and some of those teachings. He did temper Christianity somewhat himself, right?
yes.
I mean, but there is nothing like that in Islam. I mean, you have this idea of bid'ah, which is innovation in the faith, and that's not allowed. You're not allowed to innovate the faith, and that's sorry. Um, I don't want to get into a whole thing about. I mean, I can't get into a whole thing about Islam, but I think it's
Yeah.
like it's but like you can't innovate the faith. That's where like the Salafis and the so Salafi or the what else are they called? Oh Jesus, sorry, I forget. Like the really hardcore Muslims, like
Mhm.
ISIS was Salafi, Wahhabi. Sorry, so the Wahhabists, So the Salafis and the Wahhabis uh, cling to this very strictly. The Wahhabis are basically just Salafis who follow this guy Wahhab, and he was like, no, there's no innovation whatsoever. So we don't want the automobile, we don't want trains. Keep your weapons, keep your rifles, keep your guns. We want to. If the Prophet didn't do it, we don't want to do it.
Okay.
Right. So that's where like ISIS and all that is kind of in that way. Like that's the Taliban. There was no technology allowed underneath the Taliban. Because that's innovation. So that's that mentality. Um, that's
Do,
like I said, you have that in Islam pretty much to some level on all the different variations of the faith.
do you think you said there wasn't this thing in this tempering moment or this temperance in Islam, in the way in Christianity, Jesus came along and said, "You've heard an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, turn the other cheek." And it
Yeah.
was this new way of life and a new way of behaving. And do you think there's the possibility for that to happen in Islam, or is it always going to stay, at least in
Um.
the Middle East, this sort of
Okay.
fundamentalist, anti-Christian, anti?
Okay, but see, that's where people go to. Okay, yes, I think it is going to be possible, but there's gonna be have to a lot of gymnastics gonna have to be played because, like I said, you cannot innovate the faith.
Mm,
So you've got that in there, and I mean, there's a few other things. There's shirk. There's a thing called fitna, which is spreading corruption in the land. So depending on how strict the government is, if you start bringing this up, you'll find yourself in prison or in an insane asylum, um, because only an insane person would leave Islam, right? So it's it's going to be hard to do, but there are some signs of hope, and the Middle East is actually more hopeful than places like South Asia or Indonesia or the parts of the Philippines. And the reason I say that is, I think we talked about this last time, but maybe we didn't. But
mm.
um, starting in '79, both Iran and Saudi started sending out either Shia or Sunni mullahs and imams, and they all went out to Pakistan, India, Malaysia, uh, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Philippines. Like some went to the UK and parts of Europe. Some went to Australia. Some went to Canada, United States. Um, but this was to spread Islam. But also at the same point, the Saudis did something because after in '79, Mecca was stormed by terrorists, and then the mullahs said, "Well, let us spread the word, and we'll help you out." And the mullahs brokered a deal. Then in Iran, you had the revolution, and they wanted to go hardcore Shia, and so the mullahs sent out the strictest and most strident um, Muslims as the imams, and so they sent out mainly just the Wahhabis as opposed to anything else. And these guys were the ones who started spreading Islam in, like I said, Pakistan, India,
Asia.
yeah, like I said, all over Southeast Asia and South and Southeast Asia, and then all over like Indonesia and places like that, and even the West. Um, so you had this immediate shift. But in the Middle East, so in Islam, I mean, there's differences between Shia and Sunni, but even amongst themselves. So in Sunni, there's four schools of thought. So you have like Hanafi, Salafi, Maliki, and I forget what the fourth one is, and they're all different levels of how hardcore they are. And uh, so you had that in the Middle East, and so you had that internal argument within the religion. But whereas in these other places, these hardcore guys came in, and you know 80% of Muslims, I think it might even be higher, maybe it's 85, don't speak or understand Arabic. So yeah, they're like, I learned to read Arabic to read the Quran, didn't know a word I was saying. I didn't understand any of the Quran until I read it in English when I was about 22, 23, something like
Hmm.
that. Um, so these guys come in, they tell them, oh, no, it means this, this, and this. So this hardcore version of Islam gets entrenched in those countries. Uh, okay, just give
Can,
you an example. Go ahead, sorry.
uh, can you tell me, is this part of when you were 16 and you decided you said you couldn't believe anymore. Did you have a knowledge of this? Was this part of your reason for rejecting the faith, or
No,
was it more
no, like I
that
said,
you
okay, I learned from my parents. So my parents, like I said, we came to Canada in '75. So this was before any of this hardcore push. Islam in India and even in Pakistan back then, uh, in Pakistan, it started to get a little bit more fundamentalist around '72 when they got rid of the British curriculum and put in an Islamic curriculum. But even then, it was still milder than it is now. Um, but India, yeah, it was definitely a lot milder. And what India, um, you know, it was a very, very relaxed version of Islam. Like to give you an example, the fatwa on Salman Rushdie for the Satanic
Mhm.
Verses. My dad was like, "Yeah, it does say it in the book, but these people are crazy. You don't kill a guy for writing something." I mean, like, so there was that. Uh, it's sorry, I rambled a bit. And I kind of lost my train of thought.
That's okay. I was just wondering how much you knew about the history
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. No,
but
but
when you decided to
yeah,
leave the faith.
yeah. But sorry, that's why I started rambling about my dad. It's so my parents taught us what they knew because neither of my parents have ever read the Quran in a language they understand. Like, okay, my dad passed
Wow.
away a while ago. My mom still has not read it in a language she understands. She just keeps reading it in Arabic, and then she trusts people on YouTube to tell her what it's saying. So it's
Wow.
you know it, it's like with Christianity when it could only be done in Latin, and they couldn't, and the common folk
And you
couldn't.
weren't allowed to read a Bible, you had to go to a priest to know
Yeah,
what was said,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. So it's that here. It's just okay. Keep the language away from them, and so my parents, they did tell us about some of the harsh things, like some of the ways they described hell was like horrific. I mean, it's just like to scare you and stuff like that. But they had a softer version of it than you know what you see now.
Right.
And like I said, sorry, I just want to give you this example of what I was talking about with the South Asia and then with the Middle East. So in the Middle East, there's a friend of mine, Faisal Al Mutar, and him and Melissa Chen started up this foundation called Ideas Beyond Borders.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and they translate books on science and philosophy for free. And when I say philosophy, I'm not talking about postmodern crap. Like they actually put out like John Stuart Mill and stuff like that. Um, they put out a lot of science books. You know, as much as Pinker acts like an idiot right now, some of Steven Pinker's books, and so yeah, like, and he sees it in the youth there. They had, especially in Iraq, they had enough of ISIS. They don't want that anymore. I mean, ISIS did a lot in that region to, especially the young people. Like, we don't want to deal with that anymore. In Pakistan in 2018, I mean, I can give you other examples, but this is a big one. In 2018ish, maybe 2019, uh, there's a sect of Islam called Ahmadis. Think of Ahmadis like Mormons. This guy had, okay, I've got another vision. Muhammad was the last prophet to receive the truth, which is the Quran. I'm a new prophet to interpret the truth. And so, just like Joseph Smith looking at the seer stones and coming up with his version of, like his take on Christianity, which I don't know if I'd even consider Mormonism Christianity at that point, but
Right.
but Ahmadiyas, they stuck to Islam. The only thing is, okay, this guy's interpreting the rules differently, so we'll have to take a slightly different take on it. And so in Pakistan, there, to become a member of parliament or to get any official office, you have to take an oath, and part of the oath says that Muhammad is the last prophet. Like there is
Okay.
no God but Allah, and Muhammad is prophet, and he is the last prophet, and like something along those lines. Due to a clerical error, that line got left out.
Okay.
About 250,000 citizens protested against it. The government had to call out the military because they're like, look, we don't believe, this was a mistake. We'll fix it. But these people were still pissed off. So in the Middle East, you saw like the Arab Spring, you saw other things like that. Look at what's going on in Iran. Um, it started with women over the headscarf, but now it's like just the whole population is against the government. Like I don't know if you saw that thing the other day. It was when it was in a soccer game. I don't even know where the soccer game was, and I think Iran was playing, and a bunch of Iranian fans or someone took out Palestinian flags, and then like all the stadium stood up, and these were all pretty much all Iranians, and they said, like, take that flag and stick it up your ass.
Wow, no, I didn't see that.
So like, um, it's there's like so that this is going on with the youth in Iran, whereas in like in Asia, they're turning more fundamentalist because they didn't get the debate inside the religion. The debate they got was, should we throw the homosexuals off the 12th floor or the 10th floor?
Wow.
So they didn't get that maybe there's a different way to look at this verse in the Quran or whatever. So I don't want to call it quite Talmudic because it's not, but like you have that Talmudic study where you look at the Torah and you do the interpretation over and over and over again. And like, people will be looking at some of these verses for generations. There's nothing like that in Islam. There's no going back. I mean, there is some of that within these four different schools of thought in Sunni Islam. So, but it's not to the level of like I said, the Talmudic stuff with the like in Judaism. It's because again, you cannot innovate the faith. So the faith you have to be as true as possible to the Quran. And there's some, like I said, there's some room for interpretation, but so they had that in the Middle East. They didn't have that anywhere else really.
Can we switch gears for a second and
Sure.
talk about your story? I know we've covered this before, but it's been a while, and I have this new channel now. And if there's anyone new who hasn't heard your story, can we just talk a little bit about you? So you walked away from
I left.
Islam, but
Well,
then
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say specifically, I want to get to the part where your story of understanding what woke or social justice
Oh yeah,
is
sure.
very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so like, I guess I walked away, told my folks, around like 24, 25, something like that. I'd have to think about it. And then that was it. I was done. Like went through university. I moved from Montreal to Vancouver. I was looking for work. I was working, some. I was taking care of a financial database and stuff like that. Like I said, I just was living my life. Didn't speak out about anything. I mean, social media wasn't a thing, so I could, there was no real way to do it. And then in 2002, I took on a contract and I went and worked overseas. I was a contract working on military bases. I was providing support for the Canadian military on NATO missions. And then I started off in Bosnia, then I went to Afghanistan. From Afghanistan, I went to Kosovo. Then I went back to Bosnia. Then I went to Sudan. Then I went back to I went all over. Like
Okay.
And then I was in Haiti after the earthquake. My last contract was ended in December of 2013, but I got back to Canada in around end of February of 2014.
Okay.
And
Right when woke was getting big.
yeah, it just like it exploded pretty much a year or two before, right? It started started leaving the campus a year or two before. There's a difference between it exploding because it exploded on campus much earlier than that, and it started leaking out into the real world, quote
Yes.
unquote, around 2012, 2013. So yeah, I come back and I'm seeing all this bullshit talk about Islam, like how ISIS has nothing to do with Islam. Oh my God, you're Islamophobic. The whole Ben Affleck thing on Bill Maher.
Oh,
Yeah.
he was basically just calling Sam Harris and Bill Maher Islamophobes.
Yeah. But then,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was things like, okay, so I'm like, okay, these people just don't understand. They haven't read. It's just ignorance. It's so I'll just talk about Islam and I just came back from Afghanistan. I can at least use that as, like here, I went there. I at least experienced what the Taliban had done and what they're doing. But I got called a white supremacist. And I mean, I'm a little too brown to be a white supremacist. I mean, call me a racist. We can argue about that, but like white supremacist. So I was like, where the hell is that coming from?
Yeah.
Like, what brought that on?
What is this? Yeah.
So this was, 2014, 2015. By that point, the end of 2014, I ended up living up in northern Quebec. I was living up in Inuit communities, and it was just flying only. So I was isolated when I was overseas, but at least when I got back here, I was at home. I could get online. I could check things out. I was on social media, and I was seeing all this. So I just went down a bunch of different rabbit holes, trying to figure out what it was, because people are like, "Oh, this is postmodernism," and I'm like, "Well, I got a degree in the arts in the '90s. I was in political science. I read post-colonialism. I read postmodernism. I'm like, it's not quite.
Right.
Some of it, the
Some of
post-colonialism,
it.
the post-colonialism in Canada, we've always had it since about the '80s because of, we live on unceded territory and all this bullshit. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of been there. But the postmodernism, I mean, it wasn't. I'm like, it's not quite right. And then I just stumbled onto intersectionality and critical race theory, and then yeah, that's it. I just started reading that, and so when I came back in 2014, I was like, "There's something wrong here," and
Yeah.
it's starting from the academy, and I mean, and then I just started looking into it, and I was like, "Okay, this is screwed up." So yeah,
Your story, I think, is interesting to me because I'm a big fan of zombie movies, and one of the things I like about a zombie movie is when the character first realizes that the world is different, that something's changed when they first come into contact with the zombie apocalypse, what have you, and your reality changes. And your story makes me think of that, like in the TV show Walking Dead, where he's in a coma and the apocalypse breaks out, and then he wakes up and everything's different. You were gone. You were gone for so long, and you come back in 2014 and are like, "What happened?"
yeah, no,
Like,
it was nuts. Like it was just like you know, I left. Okay, Canada's never had the free speech that the United States has, and you know, there's always been calls for like hate speech and removals. We got it baked into our Charter of Rights.
Mhm,
Um, so, um, but even then, it still was kind of assumed. Okay, you can let people have their opinions and speak about it, and you should debate, you should argue. So it was, uh, maybe it wasn't to the level of I don't like what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. Maybe it'll be like I'll defend to like the first prick I get, like the first drop of blood I spill, your right
right.
to
There
say
was
it. You're like,
still somewhat of a
yeah,
foot in liberalism.
yeah. So, but that was gone. It was like I come back and it's like, what do you mean that we don't live in a rape culture? You should be fired. Because but at that point it was more rape culture was the feminism stuff, but like the
Mhm,
Islam stuff was also there. Um, and you know, it was strange to me to see people who said they were, and that's when I said these terms don't mean anything. Who said they were liberal or said they were left or left wing or whatever, defending Islam so vigorously. And I was like, where's this coming from? Like, how are people who are freaking out about, and it's not to give a pass to like, fundamentalist evangelical Christianity. Like, it's not like there's plenty of stuff in there that I think, okay, you guys are way too hardcore, or like the Reconstructionist, or what's it, the Dominion Christianity, where they want to live by the laws of the Ten Commandments, like, up to including like killing your children if they disobey, which I think is a bit harsh, but anyways. So like Islam, sorry, you got to stop me when I ramble.
Oh, well, let me show you this picture. This I saw, because I wanna explain for anybody who may be new, I wanna explain a little bit why I think you can tell me your thoughts as well on why they were defending Islam, people who say they're
Yeah.
liberal. This is a great photo. I saw the Walkaway the Walkaway account posted this yesterday, what liberals think the Middle East is like, and it's a woman in a burqa
Yeah.
with next to, a drag queen or transsexual on the subway, and it's just so funny, like, this idyllic view of, yeah, everyone's living together. What do you think of this picture?
Okay. I mean, yeah, it's happening in the United States, but if you could, or I mean, all you could see from the Muslim woman is her eyes. So
Yeah.
I mean, she's kind of giving to the drag queen or whatever a bit of a side eye, but
A bit of side eye.
is she laughing? Is she got a smile on her face? Does she think it's ridiculous? I don't know. I mean, you can't see. Um, but yeah, no, but okay, like that wouldn't happen in the Middle East. Maybe it might happen in Iran or Pakistan, because Iran and Pakistan, if they find like a gay or a lesbian couple, they give them a choice. Either both of you die or one of you gets an operation.
Wow.
So like Code Pink and Pink News, and I think Pink News did put out an article kind of correcting themselves, but both Code Pink and Pink News called Iran and Pakistan very progressive, and look, they're doing free trans surgeries and blah 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 blah. Okay,
Isn't
so
that amazing, though? I had heard that before and forgotten it, but that's I just wanna pause for a second because that's so similar to some of the arguments I've seen happening here in the West, in Canada and the US, which is a lot of people, I think rightly so, they're saying, what you're doing by pushing this trans ideology on children is you're basically telling any children who are gender nonconforming or maybe who will grow
Mm-mm.
up to be gay, possibly, you're telling them the answer is to have a sex change like operation,
Yep.
that'll make it okay. And that's what the government in these countries you're talking about, that's what they're doing. You can either die or change your sex, but you can't be gay.
Okay, but see the Islam left thing. So, okay, and it wasn't, like that's why these terms are kind of meaningless. But the left, yes, glommed onto Islam, but you still had people on the left. Okay, like Bill Maher, you can't say the guys on the right wing. He criticized Islam. I mean, Sam Harris uh, criticized Islam. Like Hitchens was a socialist, for Christ's sakes. He criticized Islam. It's but there was a contingent of the left. I mean, I know back then people like Majid Nawaz was calling it the regressive left and stuff, who glommed onto it. But if you really want to understand why, there's a really good book by Nick Cohen called "What's Left: How the Left Lost Its Way."
Okay.
Um, and there's actually a Canadian journalist named Terry Glavin. He put out an article yesterday on his Substack that, if you want, I'll send you the link. He uh, he does a fairly decent thing for like a Substack article. It's not a terribly long article, but he actually goes back about 100 years and goes through the thing. But Nick Cohen's book is good because he talks about how the socialist left, after the fall of communism, had nowhere to look and they had nothing left. So instead of arguing for workers' rights, they then went to become anti-imperialist, and they still had a hate on for capitalism. So that's when they said, okay, the U.S. is a imperialist country. The the first Gulf War was on, so they sided with the first Gulf War. Before the Gulf War, I mean, he goes back to like the late '80s, and he talks about the Iran-Iraq War and how they sided with Iraq, and then in the first Gulf War, they were also siding with Iraq. They also talked about uh, you know the support they gave to the Ayatollahs. Um, so there was it was he goes into that, but as that anti-imperialist thing got put in there, and so you had that far left or the socialist left at that point, colluding with Islam. Uh, you had it around the same time intersectionality coming into university, and you had
Mhm.
critical race theory coming into the university. I mean, the critical
Yep.
race theory got named in '89, and I think Crenshaw's first paper was in around 87, 88. I can't remember exactly.
Mhm.
Um, and then she had a really big one in '89, then another big one in '91. But yeah, so like intersectionality was coming out. The left glommed on, or like I said, the socialist left glommed onto Islam, because they were anti-imperialist. Then it got put in. Then as these people started coming out of the universities and getting jobs, some of them went to government. It was 9/11 happened. Like so, if you look at the progression, they graduated with masters and PhDs starting roughly around 97, 98. Like if you work out the math of how long it takes to take a master's and a PhD, I didn't take into account anyone who started their undergrad then went all the way through. I just look at people who would start their masters and their PhD and then
Mhm.
how long it took, and it would be like I said, roughly about 97. Um, and they've only got that lens to look through it. And so 9/11 happens. Even Bush says, Islam is a religion of peace and all this other BS. Um, and then they go to war, and oh, Islamophobia, Islamophobia, Islamophobia. And there were some legitimate things done um, to Arabs and to Muslims, and even to Sikhs because they wore turbans and people are stupid. But anyways, don't want to digress too much. But yeah, so
Yeah.
the left picked up the intersectional thing, and that's how Islam got into it.
And
Now
I just
they're
want to take a second and explain that for anybody who's new, because I know I get new people watching who maybe they have a daughter or son or someone in college who's speaking woke and they don't quite understand it yet. And I just want to tell me what you think about me explaining it this way. It's basically a belief system, an ideology that says the best way to look at the world is as a competition for power among identity groups. And they put all the in every identity group, whether it's sex, biological sex, or race, or sexuality, or size, or what have you, they say here's the oppressor in this group and here are the oppressed, and we have to all stand because of intersectionality. We have to stand with the oppressed in every group, every one of these identity groups. And so, for example, they view men as the oppressor, women as the oppressed. They view trans people as the oppressed, and what they call cis people who are not trans as the oppressor. And when it comes to Islam, they view Islam, people who are Muslim, as the oppressed, and they view anybody else, Christians, Jews, atheists, as the oppressor. And so that's why you get these weird images of, like, this image that came out recently of Queers for Palestine, where you get these
Yeah.
gay
Okay.
and lesbian people saying, "We're gonna side with the people who wanna throw us off rooftops."
Okay. So here's the thing with that, right? Like, it's yes, it's the intersectionality is that has something to do with it, but there's also the post colonialism, and the post colonialism part of it is, um, if we impose our values on them, that's another form of colonialism.
Mm,
We can't do that. Okay, so we'll respect their values. I mean, in 2000, I think it was from Duke. There was a paper that came out called "The Virtuous Cut," and it was extolling the virtues of female genital mutilation because that's their culture, and if we can't recolonize them and put European values on them, um, I mean, it's ridiculous. So it's the same thing here, and that post colonialism, it's taken root in the Middle East. I mean, it found a long way in there as well because the Muslim Brotherhood, a lot of their leadership in the '60s studied in the U.S. and they brought Marxism back with them to the Middle East, and you use that to start Pan Arabism. But yeah, I mean, like the post colonial stuff is in there, and it's like, oh no. So that's one of the things that IBB sometimes gets pushed back on. And I don't want to speak for IBB. I'm not, affiliated with them in any way, but
mhm.
like I said, this was a couple of years ago speaking to them, and oh, you're just trying to bring in Western values.
It's exactly right, and we went from when I was learning social justice at Duke, coincidentally, in the late '90s. It had not yet progressed to the point. It's progressed a lot since then. Like, back then, for example, I had a women's studies minor. Now that they consider that problematic, now it's called gender studies. Back then, as part of these social justice groups I was in, we were writing letters and campaigns against female genital mutilation, but now that's something they support and say it's oppressive for you to judge another culture, like you're saying,
Oh yeah, yeah.
it's colonialist.
O-
'Kay, go
Okay,
ahead.
so if you want to send you the article as well. So New York Times, when the protests were going on in Hong Kong in like 2019, um, and they were flying the Union Jack and the U.S. flag, the New York Times printed an op-ed, and it's bringing democracy to Hong Kong is colonialism. They would be better off under China CCP rule.
Wow.
Okay, it's nuts.
It's
Just also
nuts.
another thing, just one quick thing,
Yeah.
intersectionality. Um, the way you described intersectionality is correct, but I always when I use intersectionality, it's always for race because if you, I mean, I think you've read Gender and Queer Theory, but some of that stuff,
Mhm,
if you actually look at it, their version of intersectionality is how many intersections do you have where you're the oppressor? Whereas in Crenshaw's version of intersectionality or Peggy McIntosh's, intersectional knapsack and all that kind of stuff,
mhm.
intersectional backpack, I can't remember what she calls it. Um, it's how you are oppressed, whereas the other one is how many intersections of you oppressing people.
Right.
So it's
But
it's
either
like
way, they're having
it's
you catalog.
oh yeah, yeah,
They're having
you're,
you catalog, like, I'm an oppressor and because 'cause I'm in this
mm,
sex group, but I'm an oppressed because I'm in this race group, but I'm an oppressor because I'm in this sexuality, like, and then they never explain how you do the math to figure out exactly how much of a voice you get to have, like, what's the math on calculating, if I get to speak or not? I
oh, but then you get to like South and East Asians and like and sometimes Latinos, or should I say Latinx or whatever. Fuck. Um, we're Schrodinger's immigrants.
Yeah.
It's when a white person attacks Asians, oh my God, white supremacy, Asians are minorities. When it's black people doing it, so the largest number of physical attacks on Asians is from black people. I mean, I can't remember which newspaper it was. It was a big one. They were caught out saying, "Okay, don't report on this." I mean, okay, Jews are another thing, right? So,
Yeah.
uh, right after the Tree of Life shooting, the New York Times put out a piece, and I think it was only because Barry Weiss was editor there, but they put out a piece where they said in the last 2 years, something like 20 of the 22 previous anti-Semitic, like physical anti-Semitic attacks had been perpetrated, and this was just in the state of New York, had been perpetrated uh, by what you would consider right wing, but they didn't get reported because they didn't fit the narrative.
Yes.
So it's you're an immigrant when it helps them. You're not when it doesn't. Like when that when the massage parlors got attacked and it turns out to be the guy that was Syrian. Well, Syrians are white. You know, you put whiteness on them.
They go
They're
back
white.
to this every. Can I show
Yeah.
you something? This is
Yeah.
something
Sure.
I saw recently this week that relates to what you're saying. This was a
Mhm.
tweet from a guy named Dana White, and if you look at his bio, of course, he's a equity and anti-racism facilitator, and look at his pronouns, they, them. He's a they, them. He's special. But he said, "To expect people's response to apartheid and genocide to be peace is absolutely white logic, no matter who you are." He's calling, an opinion, he's labeling an opinion, he's giving it a race. He's giving it an identity, like
Oh,
colonialism, for example. Like it's a colonialist to say we should have peace. How dare you put your white standards, your colonialist standards on everyone?
okay. So this is some putz. Uh, so remember the Smithsonian? They had that little uh, whatever graphic when it said,
Yes.
punctuality, all that stuff is white supremacy culture, right? Punctuality, professionalism, love of the written
Yes.
word, either or thinking. I mean, there's a whole bunch of it. Okay, so and then they took the graphic off their website, but they still had a page with all that stuff listed on it.
Yes.
Okay. Canadian government is teaching our foreign service that all that stuff is white supremacy culture. Our Ministry of Immigration says that their definition of white privilege, I mean, it talks about, okay, if you're a white person, if you're a white race, blah, 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 blah. But then it says white privilege and the term white no longer just means to people of the white race. If you have ideas that uphold white supremacy, you have white privilege. So they're going back to what the Foreign Service is teaching as white supremacy culture. And if you uphold those ideas, you have white privilege. Okay. It's and again, Jews. Let's see. And I'm generalizing here, so people can say whatever you want. But like, there is a tradition of education and reading and discussion and debate in Judaism. It's
Mm.
there, and so that's love of the written word. That's either or thinking. That's reason and logic. That's it's all in there. So Jews have whiteness. Um,
They say the
during
same thing about Asians
Yep,
sometimes.
yep. If you do good math, okay. So Asians and Jews. So the book In Defense of Looting. She's talking about the riots after Rodney King and the Korean grocers up on the top of their stores, protecting them with shotguns and stuff. Then she says, she goes on and compares it to Jews in the 60s and the Watts riots protecting their stores, or the riot. I shouldn't say the Watts riots, but riots in the 60s, the Jewish shop owners were protecting their stores. She uses the phrase, just like in the 1960s, when Jews were the face of capital, so with the Koreans now.
Wow.
Like, okay, so
Amazing.
it's capitalism. During the George Floyd riots, when synagogues got vandalized, Nicole Hannah Jones, if you don't know, she wrote the 1619 project.
Tragic.
Yeah, like revisionist history. But anyways, she said, "Oh well, that's just property, and property is capitalism. Capitalism with whiteness."
Yes.
Okay,
They
so
they do equate
yeah.
capitalism with whiteness, but to be fair, they associate anything that they want to attack or that they want you to hate with whiteness because they've
Yeah,
done such a great job of seeding this idea that, that there's such a thing as white privilege, that there's something called whiteness, even the idea there's something called whiteness. As you said, the Smithsonian still has the whiteness page up on their website. Here, let me show you this. For anyone that missed this, just some detail on what Obaid's talking about. 3 years ago, the Smithsonian Museum put out this graphic. This is a leftist graphic that reads like a white supremacist graphic. There, and I like what this guy Byron York said about it. He said the National Museum of African American History and Culture wants to make you aware of certain signs of whiteness, individualism, hard work, objectivity, the nuclear family, progress, respect for authority, delayed gratification, and more. This is so racist towards people of color to say these things
Oh,
are white. These things are white
oh,
things.
okay. But so the Smithsonian put that out in 2000, whatever, it's like
20.
yeah, so 3 years ago. Now, when I started doing that deep dive into like CRT and intersectionality, and I read some gender and queer theory, then I started seeing how was going on in education. So, like I said, these guys got out in '97. They went into administrations, they went into government, they went back into the academy, and then more and more people started graduating with this. The academy started going further and further in that direction, like in the humanities and stuff like that. Um, the people in the civil service and the government started becoming more and more thinking like this. I mean, just think about this. Okay, under Trump, before Chris Rufo started reporting on what was going on at government agencies,
Mm-hmm.
which was in like 2019,
Mm-hmm.
right? Under Trump, his whole government was infected with this garbage. So it doesn't matter who your leader is. It's like there's an idea called a long march through the institutions, and
Those
you
people
know,
are there regardless of who's
yeah, yeah,
president. It's
yeah,
unelected positions.
and you have to get rid of like you have to do it in such a way. It's like you can't fire them for what they believe. Unless they're openly racist or something like that, then you can have a civil rights claim against them. But what you can do is you can get them to self-select out of it. You can say, okay, no, these are the values we're going to follow, and these are how we're going to run our departments, and this is what we're going to use. And you use like individualism, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to associate, like all that. And they're not going to accept that because they can't, and they'll leave.
Hmm.
And so, good, let them leave.
Yeah.
Um,
Can I just show a couple things
sure.
from this? Again, since you brought it up, and I know there's new people who maybe haven't even seen this, who are just starting to wake up. The it may seem weird to you that the left is putting out something saying essentially that people of color don't believe in the family structure, the nuclear family. They don't believe in individualism or hard work or being on time. But that's why so many of us say this ideology, this social justice ideology, is racist. It's not liberal. But this was what they put out, and as you said, Obey, they took it down because they got a lot of pushback. Correctly, and but if you go to this page, to this day, on the Smithsonian's website, they have a whole page on whiteness talking about race. And if you scroll down, they try and define whiteness. Whiteness and white racialized identity refer to the way that white people, their customs, culture, and beliefs operate as the standard by which all other groups are compared. Whiteness is also at the core of understanding race in America. Whiteness and the normalization of white racial identity throughout America's history have created a culture where non-white persons are seen as inferior or abnormal. No, you see, the person writing this, you see non-white people as inferior and
Yeah,
abnormal.
yeah, okay, but take a look at the education standards. They're getting rid of um, advanced placement classes. They're getting rid of like the SAT. They're getting rid of entrance
Yes.
exams. Why? Oh well, because black people do worse on them, and the tests are racist.
Yes.
Okay, it's they
It's
do.
they don't expect better for anyone who's for any child who's not white, or they say, "You can't do better.
Yep.
We're gonna get rid of grades because you
Yeah,
can't do this."
but look again. Like I know we could talk about all this, but
Yeah.
the Islam thing, like I think it's important now, just because. Okay, so everyone's seen it now. There's a lot of even like people who are lefty who supported some of this stuff. It's like I didn't think it meant that. So you've got it across campuses all the way across the United States. You know, you've got it in Canada, and the protests were sponsored by universities across Canada. In Canada, some of the largest trade union in Canada came out, or a chapter of it came out in favor of Hamas. Um, the QP that president of that chapter, or the president of that union, I'd have to check exactly what his title is, but he's high up in that union. Not only did he protest came out and supported that, he also protested with Antifa against parents. Um, so there's you had an so you had a so just like you have congressmen and state legislatures, and like you have senators and whatever that represent your state, so in or sorry, you've got governors and you've got your state legislature. Here we have like your members of provincial parliament, so MPPs. You had our left wing party, but almost all our parties are left wing, but our extreme left wing party, the NDP, um, in Ontario, one of their MPPs, she marched with the pro Hamas protests. Okay,
Wow.
you the woman that uh, Trudeau hired as his whatever anti-Islamophobia enforcer or whatever, I don't know what her title is, but she's pro Hamas.
Hmm.
Um, okay, there was a motion in Canada, and motions aren't legally binding, but they're kind of like we'd like you to act like this. So it was in 2015 or 16. She put it out. Her name is Iqra Khalid. She's the like federal minister, federal MP for uh, Mississauga, which is just outside of Toronto. Anyways, she put out this thing where if it said like, okay, Islamophobia and religious persecution. So she focused on Islamophobia,
Okay.
and so then they were went into racism and religious prejudice and blah blah blah, all these other things, and so like the government will condemn it, and they're going to take a whole of government approach to wipe out racism and religious persecution, all this other thing. It laid the foundation for legislation that came out later, which restricted speech. But so she's twice given an anti-Semite an award. The same anti-Semite on two different occasions, she's given him an award. Uh, the night, so that happened Saturday. Like I woke up on Saturday morning, and Hamas had, done that terrorist raid in Israel. That I guess Saturday over there, um, and then and then he then that night in Mississauga, there was a pro Hamas spur of the moment rally. It wasn't one of the organized ones that happened on Sunday and on Monday. These was just spur of the moment. It was in her writing, in her, like these are her citizens for the most part, I guess. But her Iqra Khalid was at a dinner with this group called ICNA. ICNA is the Islamic Circle of North America. ICNA has had Hamas speakers come speak at their events. ICNA is tied with Islam, which is, I think they're out of Bangladesh. They're a terrorist organization. So she was there. Um, I mean, hell, our government, and, you know, he was hired before, but when he was hired before, I don't think social media was as much of a thing. But anyways, it doesn't matter. But still, he was hired before by the conservative government as well, because, like I said, the agencies are corrupt. Um, but he was hired by our government to teach anti-racism to our national public broadcaster, the CBC. And this guy put out tweets about killing Jews.
Wow.
Okay, and the minister responsible for his hiring found out from another liberal minister that, hey, wait a minute, this guy, look at what the, and this the, okay, so the other liberal minister is a Jewish person, and he said to the first minister, who's this guy Ahmad Hussein, and the other one is Anthony Housefather. So Housefather came up to Hussein and said, look, this guy is an anti-Semite. In July, Hussein didn't do anything until the end of August, and they cut his funding, but he's still on contract with the Canadian government. The
They're,
guy's a raging anti-Semite.
they're
Eh,
fine with it, but
But okay, the trucker convoy. It
mhm.
just like uh, th- for all these people that are surprised, like ex-Muslims have been screaming about this, and some Reform Muslims have been screaming about this since 9/11. That there's a link between the extreme left and Islam, and they're giving them cover. And we got called the worst possible names. Well, yeah, Ben Affleck on Bill Maher calling them both Islamophobic and racist and gross. Okay, like, and it now people are seeing it. Like, so like they will defend this to the end. It's um, they don't see it wrong. They see as Islam as a minority thing. They can't see the victims for the brown people, because in North America, Islam is a minority. But Islam is the second largest religion in the world. There are more Sunni Muslims in the world than there are Catholics. Okay. It's not a small religion.
That doesn't matter to them.
Yep.
It all that matters
Yeah.
is this whole ca categorization that they do,
Mm.
where, like you said, they can't say the Islam for the brown people, where they say, "Well, it's not white and Christian, therefore it's the oppressed."
Yep.
Doesn't matter how many people there are, how many or
Uh,
what they do, they will always, unquestioning, they don't even think about it. They are supposed to, because of intersectionality, stand with the oppressed in all these different groups. If you enter social justice or woke through the feminist door, you can't just stay there in the feminist part. They want you to, that's why you see
yeah.
all of these issues linked, the trans stuff, the feminist stuff, the race stuff, the Islam stuff, because they have to speak on behalf of all the oppressed groups and all be allies with one another. That's the way they view it.
Yep. And okay, and the way they also view it is like this: it's when ISIS decided who the true Muslim is, and they were almost as harsh on Shia Muslims as they were on atheists and Yazidis and whatever. They don't like Shia, because they're not true Muslims. They didn't follow the chain after Muhammad died. Um, so Nicole Hannah Jones saying, "Well, we know the difference between politically black and racially black, right?"
Yeah.
They will decide if you are a good, you know, if you're a good, whatever BIPOC, whatever term you want to use for Christ's sakes, or not. And it is very ideologically driven. Um, and that's okay. That's where I think with the trans stuff, like jumping off, if you look at kids, you start telling kids that they're evil and oppressive and racist because they're white and they have no other option. You're telling them that they're sinners. Okay. You're telling them that they were born Jacobs, not Esau's.
Mhm.
Right. And then a couple of years later, well, if you're non-binary, you're not trans, you're always that way and you were always oppressed. Oh, a path to salvation.
Yes. A
You know,
path to being one of the oppressed.
no, now
Yeah.
now you're a Jacob, or sorry, now you're an Esau. You were I always get that story wrong, so I could be like, was it God so loved Esau that he blessed him in the womb, and then it was Jacob that was cursed, or was it the other way around? I can't remember.
I
Um,
think it was the other way around.
yeah. So yeah. So that, but yeah, but that's what it is, and it's this religion, and so they see Islam as an oppressed group. They see Jews as white. They see Israel as a colonial state. Um, that's why they use decolonization. If anyone hasn't read Frantz Fanon, I know James Lindsay's been going on about this, but read
Mhm.
Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth, because he puts that map out there. And I mean, he basically says if whoever was oppressed, the only way they can get over it is to oppress their oppressor for the same amount of time. So when you read Kendi and he says the only cure for present discrimination, or the only cure for past discrimination, is present discrimination, it's a very watered down version of Fanon.
Yes.
Um, and so, like, these people, they see Jews as rich. I mean, Jesus Christ, Whoopi Goldberg. Well, the Holocaust was white on white violence. Like, come on. Um, like I was joking around with some friends of mine, um, that the you know and this was back in maybe 2019. I said within 2 years you're going to start seeing Jews of color, like you're going to start seeing that term. And then one of them's a professor at Rutgers, and he reached out to me and said, and this was like I think a year later, he's like, take a look at this. And it was a thing from the university about Jews of color.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
'Cause they need to get back to the, "Hey, we've been marked as oppressors
Yeah,
somehow." But it's actually they go the Jewish people, the woke put them, much like Asians, they move them back and forth. Sometimes they'll include them as an oppressed group.
uh,
More often than not, they explain how they have white privilege and they're part of the oppressor group. And the same thing with Asians. They will use them when they need to. They will include them with BIPOC when they need
yeah.
to, but a majority of the time they say, "No, they have white privilege, they're white adjacent," they put them in
Uh,
the oppressor group. It's all just based on what they need to argue in that moment.
Yeah, okay. I mean, there was a conference during
Yeah.
COVID. It was online, but it was in Canada. One of the organizers is now the head of the largest teachers union in Ontario. So I'm assuming that's largest school board in Australia, in Ontario, which I'm assuming it's the largest one in Canada, but could be wrong about that. Another one is she was at the time the editor of the Toronto Star, which is a fairly major newspaper in Canada, and the other two were two Middle Eastern guys. I have no clue what they were, but the conference was brown complicity and white supremacy. So like how brown people are helping white supremacy along, and I think in so what was it in allyship with Black Lives Matter or something like that. It was really stupid, but yeah, no, they it was so yeah. You've got that oppression that goes back to the intersectionality. So black people are the most oppressed. I don't know if it's black or indigenous because I read a couple of papers. I mean, I read one paper that um, the slaves that were brought over because their labor helped enrich the slave owners, so the settler colonialist,
Hmm.
their labor enriched them, and their labor helped the settler colonialist wipe out the indigenous people. So the slaves are partially responsible for the genocide of the indigenous people. Okay, so I don't know if anyone saw that video of Hamas killing that Thai farmer or that Thai laborer at a farm. They took a rake or a hoe. I think they took a hoe or something, and or maybe a shovel, and they beheaded him.
I
Um,
didn't see that. I don't.
and everyone's like, why would they kill a Thai person? He's not an oppressor. He's not a colonialist. No, no, no. But he went over, he worked for the colonizer. His labor is enriching the colonizer. So he's like, after World War II, he's a collaborator. So anyone you didn't like was a collaborator. So they that's how the far left can justify Hamas killing that person.
They, in terms of how they justify it and which group do they view as more
Mhm,
oppressed, I think much like with Asians and Jewish people, it depends on the day. It's a little like their list of the oppressed groups is like the stock market. You have to look and
mhm.
see, oh, are Black people more oppressed today, or is it Native Americans? And they change it depending on
Okay, no,
what's happening in the news or what they want to push.
I think it has more to do with who the two parties are. Okay,
Mm.
so 2019 or 2020, there was a whole bunch of attacks at Hanukkah on synagogues. The last night of synagogue and the last attack was the most horrific. It was a black guy that went into a synagogue, killed a bunch of people, and went back to the rabbi's home and killed the rabbi. So the local story, which was then picked up by bigger outlets, was let's not get consumed by whiteness and attack the black community. It's like you just had a black person kill a bunch of Jewish people and the rabbi on the last night of Hanukkah,
Yeah.
and you're worrying about getting consumed by whiteness. I mean, okay, New York Times. There was a bunch of so there was a school trip from New Jersey to New York. A bunch of so I think it was four black girls and two South Asian guys. South Asian guys were started picking on the girls, and then they ended up pissing on them. And the article was about how this was another manifestation of whiteness.
They have to always bring it back to that. Let me
Yeah.
show a few examples of what you're talking about, the left's response to the events that are unfolding in Israel and Gaza. Just in case people aren't aware, again, this happened a few days ago. Black Lives Matter Chicago put out this statement and this graphic, and it was a picture of a paratrooper with the Palestinian flag, and it says, "I stand with Palestine." And what they had to say about it was they said, "That is all that is it." Okay. But, they got a lot of pushback for this, so they apologized. Not They didn't really apologize. They put out a statement where they basically, again, said that the Hamas will do what they must in order to achieve freedom. They'll do what they called the raping and the murder and the torture of
Uh,
innocent civilians doing what they must. And then let me just read this really quickly. They said, Black Lives Matter grassroots stands in solidarity with our Palestinian family who are currently resisting 57 years of settler colonialism, there's the word, and apartheid. As Black people continue to fight to end militarism and mass incarceration in our own communities, let us understand the resistance in Palestine as an attempt to tear down the gates of the world's largest open air prison. As a radical Black organization grounded in abolitionist ideals, we see clear parallels between Black and Palestinian people.
oh yeah. Okay, but so that the this is from okay, so Louisville Social Justice for Palestine or something like that. Day of Resistance are using the same thing. The thing of the paratrooper. UNC used it. I'm trying to think another
UNC
university.
image.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
and then okay, but look at the stuff they're saying as well, right? And I'm not talking about curbing speech. I'm not talking about any of that. But even if you look at some of the stuff that's being said, it even crosses the line as far as the First Amendment goes. The First Amendment, as far as I'm concerned, is the best defense of free speech you
Yes.
have legally. But even that says, no imminent, uh, no, no imminent and immediate threats of violence, no incitement to violence. That like so. In Australia, they got in front of the Opera House and they were saying "gas the Jews." Okay,
Wow.
I'm sorry, but in my book, that's especially with what everything that's going on, that comes close to immediate and imminent threat. Or uh, from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free. So from the river to the sea means from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, which means wipe out Israel. Okay,
Mhm.
that's it's they're not being blunt about it. There was one, I don't know if it was at, I mean, the one at University of Wisconsin in Madison. They were cheering Hamas and saying how great it was. There was another one, I can't remember where it was. Uh, Same thing. It was they were cheering him on, talking about how Hamas are the leaders in the fight to fight colonialism. Uh, there was, I think, this one was. I'm trying to remember where this one was, but they were singing "There is only one solution."
Wow.
Okay, like it's. I mean, if that's not reminiscent of, um, the final solution, I don't know what is. But
This
there was. Go ahead.
this one is from NYU. Did you see this one?
No, I don't know if I've seen that one in
The
particular, but I've seen a lot.
I've got a couple of the college responses pulled up here. This was the NYU student pres. They sent out a statement and said in the statement, Israel bears responsibility for this tremendous loss of life. They're talking about the innocent Israelis, the people at the music
Yep.
concert who were slaughtered. They say it's their fault. Israel bears the responsibility. And Harvard put out something similar. Let me just show you this one.
Yeah, 30 or 31 student association, something like that at Harvard.
Yeah. This is the joint statement by Harvard Palestine solidarity groups, and it was a whole list of Harvard student groups, and they said, "We, the undersigned student organizations, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence," and they go on to blame the victims here. It's a whole disgusting statement, and all of these colleges are showing their true colors now. I think the way I described it, I don't know if you would agree, but it's like, they took the mask off. So there are
Yeah.
people who are on the left who I've seen them. I was looking at Sarah Silverman's timeline. There are people she's retweeting and people she's interacting with who are on the left who are appalled by this and like shocked because this is for them could be their waking up moment. Do you know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, no, no, it's sure, like, I see that, and I see it, I'm like, "Good," but don't try to, like, push under the rug what you've done. Like, I'm sorry, but if you've supported CRT or intersectionality, you're partially responsible for this because it it broke out of the universities like well, you were talking about earlier when I first got on like around 2012 and went on to like 2012 2013. That's when I started leaving the university. But it's it's been going back in as well. They've been coming back as administrators and some faculty, and they've been bringing more and more of this to it. I mean, hell, it's gotten into STEM now, right? Concordia University of Montreal, they want to do a thing on um, how white light is racist. Like
Wow.
we export this shit, and universities in South Africa are bringing on black physics. It's no, it's nuts. Like so the STEM fields are being felt by this because they're coming in from people with PhDs in CRT or intersectionality or
Mhm.
sociology that's looking at stuff with that lens, and they say, "Oh no, no, not that, not that." Okay, they're not coming in telling them that okay, this is not how you do physics. They're coming in saying your policies are making your department racist, and you have to fix that. So you have to. This is how you have to look at hiring. This is how you have to look at admissions. This is how you have to. So they're getting them to bring their brainwashed people into those departments. So that's why you have these really bizarre papers. I mean, there's a paper I don't know all of them, but there was a paper back in '97 where she was saying that the theory of relativity was misogynistic. Um, I mean, like, so
Yes.
they'll find it in anything, right? It's just so everything's become corrupt. So the universities all look at it in one way, and that way is who's the oppressed, who's the oppressor, and in this case, Israel is the oppressor, and Muslims are the oppressed, or Hamas is the oppressed, and they're Muslims or Palestinians. You know, it's like it's a big problem. It's so all these people like, okay, we have to fix this, we fix this. I think people are also waking up and realizing how bad the problem is.
Yes.
Like I mentioned the Long March to the Institutions before, and that was this German philosopher named Deutschke.
Hmm.
He came out with this idea of, okay, we have to take over the institutions and control culture so that then we can control it ourselves.
Yes.
Right? It's all over the academy. Nicholas Christakis, he put out this tweet and he said, you know, like, how did this happen? For over 12 years, I saw these illiberal trainings for freshmen where they segregate people by race. But how did we get to this point? I'm like, you saw civil liberties being infringed upon and you did nothing?
And you did nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Like think about that.
And they went along with this for
Yeah.
fear of being called racist or sexist.
Yeah,
It's like,
but I mean, these are the people who would, at a drop of a hat, will say that, use that saying like, first they came for the trade unionists, but I said nothing, and I
yeah,
didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Blah 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 blah. They're the first ones to prop that out, and they let it go on in the academy. He's saying for over 12 years they were doing this to kids, or whatever, young adults, and they were teaching them that white people are evil. Now it got into K through 12. Uh, in about 16 or 17 states around 2017, 2018. It was in middle schools and high schools. I think it was in high schools around 2010. It was in middle schools by about 2013. So you turned schools into woke madrasas, and then you
wow,
sent them off to woke seminaries.
yeah.
Okay, like it's and
What a great way of putting it.
no, but that's what they are. Okay. Not every kid who goes to a madrasa is going to join ISIS or the Taliban, but and you can compare the stats in Europe with the Middle East. If you look in Canada, United States, we were luckier because it was harder to get here. It was more expensive. So you got richer, more affluent Muslims who were a bit more moderate. Okay. Whereas in the UK, I think it's 96% of UK Muslims want homosexuality to be criminalized. Okay. It was another inordinately high number. I don't want to give a number, but it was, maybe 90%, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, that supported Charlie Hebdo, like the killings of Charlie Hebdo. Um, it, so it won't make you join ISIS, but it'll make you, cheer them on, and that's what these people are.
Sympathetic. Yeah.
That's what they've they've had this education. So if someone started school in, okay, so someone was in high school in 2010, they graduated, they whatever, but or they got out, or someone got into high school in 2016. It's now 2023, or someone got into middle school in 2016. They've had this crap in all their courses. It's not just in social sciences, whatever. Like the English books they read are viewed through this lens. The history they're taught is viewed through this lens, and so they get to college, they already have this lens, and then it's just really honed and sharpened. And now that's why you have what you're seeing now, this siding with these horrific. I mean, you were talking about Queers for Palestine. One of my favorite things about that was Douglas Murray, and he was doing this talk in the UK, and he's like, oh, he was talking at that point. It was Gays for Palestine. He's like, give me a break, Gays for Palestine. If Gays for Palestine wanted to go to Palestine, they'd have to be in Israel. And like,
This is that image, by the way, for anyone who didn't see it. Queers for Palestine. This went viral this week. I
yeah,
just thought it was similar to Clayton Bigsby, the old, the black white
yeah,
supremacist.
yeah. But that's what it is. I mean, okay, black white supremacists. There's a school trustee, or he was running for school trustee, and he was on one of the boards. This guy named Mike Ramsey. He's in Canada. He's just in Toronto or just outside of Toronto. He's a black man. He gets called a white supremacist.
Mm.
Larry Ellison's the black face of white supremacy.
Larry Elder, yes.
Or Larry Elder, yeah, that's right.
That's what I thought of when at the beginning, and somebody in the chat said when you got called a white supremacist, it's like Larry Elder. It's so funny. They called the woke called Charles Barkley a white supremacist. I remember that.
Yeah,
Just crazy.
but yeah,
What
uh,
so what do you make of it's hard to know how to ask this. I haven't offered a lot of opinions on what's happening unfolding in the Middle East because I don't feel like I have the background or knowledge to have a very definitive opinion yet, other than there's no justification ever for murdering, raping, and torturing innocent civilians. There's no justification for
okay,
that.
no. So
But but
if you want what's my opinion on what's going on,
Mhm,
I'll be real simple with this. It's okay. There are things to criticize Israel for. Okay?
mhm,
Just like there's things to criticize every country for and every government for. But yeah, Israel has done some stupid things by like pressing forward more settlements and stuff. Okay. But that's not that's not where the left stops.
mm,
You know, the open air prison thing. It's not an open air prison, right?
right.
They can do what they want. They can even come into Israel. I mean, Palestinian Israelis, like or Arab Israelis, who are basically Palestinians, they have the right to vote. They can go. Their rights aren't infringed at all. So it's okay. You wanted to live under Hamas. You voted for Hamas. You got that. That's your area. You can come into Israel to work, but I mean, you get checked and everything, and you have to. I mean, obviously, you see why. Um, Hamas is taking all the money that they're getting and they're using it to make weapons. So there's been a few videos out now. The people are openly talking about it. When Gaza was made and Israel pulled out, and Israel said, "Okay, we're going to help you with your plumbing and stuff." So they dug all these tunnels and they gave them all this plumbing. They gave them all these
Mm.
tubes, these pipes. They used those pipes to build rockets. Okay, I mean, everyone's like, "Oh, like you shouldn't attack children." Okay, Hamas shouldn't put their rocket batteries in schools and hospitals. Hamas shouldn't put their bases of operations in the middle of civilian areas. Hamas should not be telling people, no, don't leave, and forcing people to stay in Gaza when Israel says in 24 hours, we're going to flatten the northern part of Gaza. Leave.
Right.
Hamas is keeping people in. Now, I think a lot of these people are just finally realizing that Egypt has a border with Gaza as well, and Egypt has kept their border shut. Why? Because when they opened it up and the Palestinians came in, Hamas went into Egypt and started raising shit, and Al-Sisi didn't want that. Al-Sisi was against the Muslim Brotherhood. I'm not saying Al-Sisi is a temperate or a moderate. He's pretty hardcore himself, but he wants to be the hardcore person. He doesn't want to share it with terrorists. Okay, so he outlawed the Muslim Brotherhood. He did all kinds of other stuff. So he doesn't want Hamas in there. And they're still not opening up the doors. They're saying we'll let in all the humanitarian aid you want, but we're not opening up those doors. So I don't think a lot of these people even knew where Israel was on a map. I doubt they could point it out.
Mm.
And and they're commenting on it. I'm not saying I'm any sort of expert. I just like there's things I've read. So I mean, this stuff goes back a long time. It goes
No,
back to
but
like
you have a lot of humility and restraint, and I'm not seeing a lot of that right now with people assuming that they're experts on something
Mhm.
and
Yeah, my take on this is like, okay, yeah, Israel was attacked. They've done some crappy things, and we can address those crappy things, but let's address them like adults, not with all this BS. Stop calling it an open air prison because it's not. Let's talk about how Hamas, when they get food aid, they sell that in the stores instead of giving it out. It's like
Can I show something?
sure,
I don't know that much about Gaza, and so I was looking at this. I saw this guy collected some Snapchat videos from Gaza, and he said, "Who is this? Phil that remains says people that say Gaza is an open air prison need to remember that you can look at Snapchat and verify that that's totally untrue, and it's just like videos of people hanging out, like young people doing what young people do."
I don't know. I mean, maybe it is Gaza, maybe it's the West Bank. I have no idea. Like it could be Gaza. I don't know. I've never seen those pictures. I like I said, it could be. It couldn't be. I mean, I don't know how. I Given the option, I'd say that's more the West Bank than it is Gaza, because I
Mm,
mean, not that Fatah are nice people or anything like that, but at least I think they take care of their civilians. Because one of those pictures looked like it was on the coast, and I mean, I'd have to look at a map myself, but I don't see Gaza having a coastline.
yeah.
Um,
John
yeah, it
said,
does.
oh, go
It
ahead.
does.
It
It,
does have a
it, it
coast.
does have a coastline. So yeah, I was wrong about that, but um, maybe there it is. Like I don't know. But Hamas is not treating that area well. Hamas is not providing proper care to its citizens. Um, you know,
What would you say to this? Maurizio says they have a wall around them. What do you call that? The wall is to protect Israel's border.
yeah.
I mean,
I
is
mean,
Israel not allowed to protect its border?
Hamas's charter says straight out that they want to wipe Israel off the map. You have a right to protect yourself. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, I wish we had a wall on our border. And it seems
yeah.
like Biden is finally at the point where he's like, "Oh, I
Mm,
guess we have to build a wall,"
mm,
after demonizing people who wanted one for 6 plus years.
mm. But I mean, it's like Gaza is. You know, so you had the Palestinian Authority. Sorry, that's Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. It was Fatah before, um, and you had this stuff in in Gaza, and then you voted in Hamas. Like, so you got to like they've turned down every offer for peace. They've turned down every offer they could, and a lot of it was because the West Bank and Gaza, the two political parties there didn't want to work with each other. So I mean, they were trying to do a two-state solution when maybe they should have tried a three-state solution. I don't know, but Gaza came in and said, "We're going to wipe you off the map." I said, "You don't need a border with Israel with Egypt. Then why aren't Egypt letting in their Muslim brothers and sisters? Why isn't Egypt, letting in the Ummah, which is supposed to be all one big Muslim family? Because they don't want Hamas in there either. It's, you know, Egypt closed its borders just like Israel did, but no one talks about Egypt closing its borders because
Yeah.
Israel is the colonizers. Israel is white. Egypt isn't.
So they don't create. See,
Uh,
this comment, that question, I just wanna make this point because, I think it's really important, and I think because of what's going on in Texas specifically and with our border, I think it's important. If you are, raised on the left, if you've come up in these leftist colleges like I did, you probably picked up the idea somewhere along the way that somehow borders are bad, that protecting your border or your nation is a bad thing. Would you I don't understand that anymore. I used to believe that because I was on the left, but would you not protect your house? Do you not have a right to have security cameras? Do you not have a right to lock your door? Do you not have a right to keep people out of your home and to be in charge of who is allowed in and who's not?
yeah, but private property is whiteness, and that's wrong. I
I know.
mean, no, but
That's
they
a
want to
good
get
point.
rid of ownership, right?
They do. Yeah.
So yeah, you need to have a strong border. I mean,
Yes.
um, you need to have protection. We still have a border where people coming up from the states. I mean, obviously, it's nothing close to what you guys are getting. Um, but at one point in Quebec, I think we had in like a few months, we had like 100 and some odd thousand come through. Um,
Wow.
and maybe that was Quebec and Ontario. I'd have to go back and check the numbers, but it was a big chunk. And there was this woman in like the eastern townships of Montreal. So it's like our cottage country. She was an older woman. She would look like she was in her maybe like 60s or early 70s, something like that. Um, and she asked Trudeau in French, "Who's going to pay the 146 million that this is costing us?" And his response, per usual, is racism has no place in Canada. Stop being racist.
He doesn't know how to answer the
Okay, okay,
question.
okay, but I'm sorry, that's not a racist question. She's not saying keep these people out. She's not. She's saying like who's paying for this because she's a taxpayer. She has a right to know where that money's coming from, and
Mm.
it's um. But he calls her a racist. So it's like these people aren't serious. To these people, it's like I said, they're the disenfranchised. We have to let them in. You know, that's why they call people like Thomas Sowell or Glenn Lowry or John McWhorter or um, Wilford Riley, whatever, any black person that doesn't go along with them. That's why you'll see them called Uncle Toms. And
Yes.
I mean, you had Tim Scott, the Republican congressman or senator, whatever his name is. You know,
Tim
they were
Scott
call,
from South Carolina, yeah.
yeah, they were calling him an Uncle Tom. There's all kinds of stuff. It's just, I mean, I got the same thing when I was speaking out about Islam. I got called an Uncle Tom. I got called a native informant, which I have no idea what that means. Um, I got called a coconut. I got called a bounty bar, you know, brown on the outside, white on the inside.
You're
Um,
making me hungry, Obaid.
yeah,
I'm kidding.
I mean, like it's you know, these are the people who are inclusive and whatever all this other BS, right? Like, be kind. Um, so it, you know, experience is important unless it goes against the narrative.
Mhm.
And so again, they don't care about the facts. They care about their cult. They have one way of responding, and that's the only response they have. That's the only thing it can go. And so
Their
these people,
response is
yeah,
always to call you an ist of
yeah,
some kind.
yeah,
Always.
yeah,
Racist, sexist, whatever. They or homophobic. They'll it's always to accuse you of bigotry. That's their only
mm,
response. Like Trudeau did in that example you gave.
mm,
She asked a very legitimate question, "How are we gonna pay for this influx of immigrants?" And he says, "That's a racist question."
yeah.
Like,
Um, he didn't say that's a racist question. He said that's racist. Stop being racist. Well,
yeah.
but it's like I mean, I've said this for a while. I said you can't, like, forget about the true believers. You can get the people before they convert, you'll have a chance. But the true believers, I mean, that's going to take a lot more, and it's going to be, they're going to have a wake up point. Now, how much of a true believer are you? How much of a fundamentalist? I think that also has something to do with it. Um, so these people who are now saying, "Wait a minute, what the hell's going on here?" These were the people who were thinking about converting, or they were new converts or whatever, and they were they finally just said, no, this is crazy. They were mouthing the, you know they were just saying the words, they didn't mean it.
Mhm.
um oh yeah, Black Lives Matter. And then, oh, what do you mean Black Lives Matter supports Hamas? And what do you mean Black Lives Matter supports rape and kidnapping and murder? I mean, it's just it so once they figured it out, then once they figured it out, they're like, ooh, wait a minute. There's a really good book called Agent Storm.
Okay.
This guy this guy left Christianity, became an atheist, and he converted to Islam and joined a very fundamentalist sect of it, and then left the UK, went to Afghanistan to join the Taliban, and then he was doing some work with the Taliban. He was in a Western country. They were waiting for someone, and the person he was supposed to meet was late. He got pissed off, so he started looking up on the internet. This isn't his book, by the way, so I take it for whatever it's worth.
Mhm.
He said that he started looking up, and he looked at um, inconsistencies in the Quran, and he got a bit of doubt. And once that doubt came in, he stopped believing.
Okay.
Now it's the same thing with these people just realizing now, like, holy shit. So this is like them going like he did and looking up inconsistencies in the Quran, but they don't even have to look it up because it's being shown so
It's right in front of
blatant.
them.
Okay, so the doubt is coming in.
I wanna highlight this because this is exactly, my waking up story, me waking up and leaving the social justice left, the woke, that happened in 2016 and 2017. It was a long process. But what you're describing, everybody who's left has had that waking up moment where there's like the first cracks in the foundation of the belief system and they start to realize something's not right. And I think for some people on the left, I've seen it in the people on the left. I'm looking at some of the Twitter feeds and they're appalled by organizations like BLM basically condoning terrorism, condoning evil. They're appalled by it. And so I pray, if you're a praying person, I pray that they wake up, that they don't just double down. And I let me show you one quick thing. This is for anybody who's having their eyes opened. that we showed you that graphic from BLM Chicago where they had the paratrooper and they were basically supporting and saying, you know, Hamas will do what it must for freedom. They after they took the image down because they got a lot of pushback, they addressed the fact that people were withdrawing support, and they said for everyone withdrawing support, saying they stood with us and now they're removing signs. Bye, toodles. And then they do the waving hand. We've always been for Palestinian freedom. We stood with Rasmia. There's no way you could have been with us at any point and missed that to be shocked now.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what she did. She was a terrorist, but okay, the
Yeah,
Women's
they stood
March,
with her.
yeah, the Women's March, right? So Linda Sarsour
Mhm.
on the board. There's Linda Sarsour who's done events with terrorists. She's Palestinian. No, sorry. I believe she's Saudi. Maybe I'd have to go back and check, but yeah, I haven't seen her from her a long time, but she supports Palestine. I can't remember if she's
Yeah.
Saudi or she's Palestinian. But she's done events with terrorists. I think if you go back and look at the Women's March, the board and stuff like that, she brought on someone um, who, or she brought on someone as a speaker who had gone to prison in Palestine for like committing a terrorist act, or prison in Israel for committing a terrorist act. Eh, So the Women's March had this, like, these institutions. Like, she was a surrogate for Sanders. Right?
Yeah.
She won a prize for fighting against anti-Semitism, and during her speech, she talked about how the Jewish-controlled media was out to get her. I mean, um, yeah, like I said, I've been looking at this left Islam alliance. Well, for myself, it's been since 2014 because when I was overseas, I was on military bases and war zones, and we didn't get social media really. We didn't get to see a lot of this stuff, and um, I had no clue what was going on until 2014. Um, but yeah, it's nuts.
The Women's March, by the way, 2017. So this stuff has been brewing for quite a while. And like BLM Chicago says here, I mean, they get one thing right, which is that they've always espoused these beliefs. It's just that a lot of people on the left aren't seeing it like we did. They're just now seeing what that means. They're seeing it emotionally, like what that means in
Uh,
looking at these photos and videos of what the terrorism, the evil that's happened.
but it's also okay. Like the long march of the institutions thing. I'm not saying this was a bunch of people got together in a room and said, "Oh, we're going to do this." But what did happen though was the the press and the academy were pretty much screwed by 2012. There's a guy, Zach Greenberg, I believe his name is.
Mm.
He's You can find his articles in Tablet, and he did this. He based an article off his PhD thesis, where he tracked the New York Times, Washington Post, the LA Times, and the Boston Globe or the Boston Herald. I can't remember which one. Um, Use of the terms racist, whiteness, racism, Islamophobia, Islam, like a bunch of these words.
Mhm.
Islamophobia and Islam, yeah, right around right after 9/11, it started going up. By the time Obama's first term came up, it sort of started being racism and stuff. By the time his second term came up, it tripled. By the time you got to Trump, it then quadrupled from where it was at Obama's second term. So these words and these terms were just shooting through the roof.
Yeah.
And so you had it coming from that side. You had people coming out of universities going into jobs, and they're DEI instructors, or they're gone into HR and they're setting policies, or they're setting policies at government organizations. So it it got into everything and it took everything over. So, you know, you're saying around your time, like 2016, 2017, that's when okay, Trump came into power, but that's when this stuff was left alone. If I shouldn't say left alone because I mean Trump didn't do anything about it, but it really doubled down. It started, oh my God, Trump's in power. We have to do something.
It got crazier then.
Yeah,
It went into way hyperdrive, the
yeah.
mainstream,
So
everybody. Yeah.
it all these institutions went really hardcore because America's turning into a Nazi country. Blah 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 blah. Okay, Yeah, a lot of these protesters with Hamas, I've seen them holding up swastikas, and yet they're calling everyone else Nazi. So take that for what you will. Um, but so your press wasn't telling you exactly what was going on. That's why a lot of Democrats believe there's 1,000 unarmed black people getting killed by cops every year.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why you know look at Kendi's organization that floundered, but BU is still doubling down on anti-racism.
Hmm.
Like I guarantee you, a lot of these universities after this, if this settles down, they are going to turn around and say, "Then we need to fix this, and we want more anti-racism." They're gonna double down on it because
Yeah.
that's all they know.
That's all they
That's
know.
okay. That's all their administration knows. That's all what a lot of faculties. Well, I'd say it's only about 25% of the faculty, but that's a majority of the students think that way. They've come in from these woke madrasas thinking like this, so they want to continue it, and so they're going to push. The student unions are going to push for these kind of policies. They're going to get no, we want this. You know, uh, they're and like I said, the administration staff, majority of the administration staff thinks like this. It's the fact some of the faculty because they're older and they remember actually academic freedom are when they're starting to wake up now. They're starting to have organizations. Like I've spoken to a few professors um, who've got organizations in like all along like the state universities in California. So I know Pinker's doing something with Harvard. Um, there's a few other things that are going on, but like honestly, until they work with government, because at this point, I think people are seeing that these are so far gone. We're going to need something more than just a free speech organization with teachers.
Yeah.
Um, like it's. I think people are realizing how bad it's gotten. Like how many things are corrupted, how many things are taken over, um, and talk about lack of trust. Like people already didn't trust the institutions, and now it's going to be a lot worse. And you know, I have no idea what is going to come of this. Like, it's a generational fight you're looking at. You've
Hmm.
had a generation of people who were taught to look at this way, and they've been coming into all these jobs for a generation. I'm sorry, there's not enough jobs at Starbucks as baristas for all of them when you fire them all or when they leave.
Hmm.
Like what are you going to do with? Uh, I think the universities should. It's not that I want student loan debt or anything like that, but the universities all have these huge endowments or big ones, anyways. They should forgive all their student debt. Why? Because they gave. I mean,
They
if I was a
brainwashed them.
yeah, if and they gave them degrees that make them fit for no purpose. Like
Well, they've, as you mentioned, though, they've taken those degrees that make them fit for no purpose, and they've been fine. They've moved into the corporate world, and they've been
yeah,
shaping the corporate world and making the corporate world woke and ruining institutions like Disney. Ruining our entertainment
yeah,
corporations and
but now some corporations are fighting back. So there was that law firm that said, "Okay, let us know about those 31 students associations. Who's a member? They're never going to get a job at our firm." There was a article a couple months back, in a couple of months, I think, back in the Wall Street Journal, where a bunch of the hedge funds and VCs and stuff said, "Yeah, we don't want to hire the woke. We don't
yeah,
want where they were dumping all their DEI stuff."
yeah,
Okay, so
good,
the this will get rid of some of the extremes, but the underlying thought process that's already in all your institutions, and you have to take a look at all these institutions. So, if all these hedge funds fire their DEI departments, take a look at how your HR is running, and take a look at your middle management, and see how they're running their departments and what they're trying to do. Like, how are their hiring practices? Are they like you if you're an IT firm, are you hiring for competence or are you hiring for diversity? You want to
right,
be hiring for competence.
for
You know,
competence.
like this guy in Concord, no, McGill University in Montreal, uh, Pat South Asian, and he's a PhD in chemistry. He's a professor there. He was applying for a research grant, and he said that he would, the part of the research grant is like, how are you going to do your hiring, everything, and he didn't put in a diversity statement. He was going to do it by merit, and because of that, he got called a racist, and then his grant got denied.
Mm.
Right? So it's in STEM that way. It's controlling who gets in. Like Trudeau, I think it was in 2015 or 2016. Um, all our chairs of the university had to be um, equitable. So you had to have an equity in all the chairs of all the university like departments. So I'm sorry, but if I want a chair in physics, I want someone who's good at physics. I don't care if they're a man, woman, yellow, brown, red, purple, polka dot. I don't give a
They're
rat's ass.
preaching this stuff everywhere. It's not just STEM. It's like the other day, I'm in a couple of managers forums on Facebook or
Uh,
groups, and this music managers group with like 8,000 people in it. I noticed they keep posting job notices for this is for the industry side of music, so hiring at like
uh,
at music lawyers, attorneys' offices, or hiring for music manager positions or at record labels. And they explicitly will say in their postings, a lot of these people, that this job is just for only BIPOC resumes and LGBTQ plus resumes would
yeah,
be considered. And if you say something like, I noticed, I went back through some of the postings. If you anybody who says anything in the comments, including there was a black guy in the comments saying this is racist, this is discrimination against white people, and they will say, "No, it's impossible to be racist against white
yeah,
people," and then they'll ban you from the group.
yeah. But there's, I mean, like,
Like,
there's all
yeah.
kinds of jobs in Canada as well. There's government jobs that they're saying only, we will only consider, basically non-white applicants. Uh, I mean, it's all over the place. Like, so there's so much of this, but
Well, I wanna wrap this up. I've had you for 2
mm,
hours. I'm really appreciative of your time.
no worries.
I just wanna give people we're talking about how to get it out of institutions, but, we're all individuals here listening, like, in your daily life, how do you obey, like, how do you deal with living in a world with this ideology being so dominant? What do you do to push back?
Um, don't fall for it. Don't put into it. Like, I used to work for a government. Okay, so you know, I spoke my mind. I spoke out online. I spoke out against Islam. I was part of a group called Excellent Muslims of North America. I put out videos for them that were seen. No, I'm not saying they went viral or anything like that, but I think there was like 20, 30,000 people who saw it. Like, I was not shy about being open about it. So just do it. Uh, and depending on what industry you're in or what you're going to do, you're going to get pushback one way or another. But I think you'll find that more people than not don't really agree with it. I mean, most people don't really know what it's about. They're just mouthing the word. So if you can actually sit down one on one with them and show them this, um, like, I'm not saying you have to do what I did. Like, I got lucky at one point or other. I was on medical leave because I got frostbite and lost a chunk of flesh on my foot. I was
You
in
got
medical.
lucky?
Well, I was lucky that in the sense that I got 18 months of medical leave. So I took that 18 months and I really did a deep dive into CRT and intersectionality, and like, I'd read some of it before, but this one I just went like straight in. I don't expect people to read that much, but know what you're talking about,
Yeah.
explain what you're doing, but don't fall prey to the bullshit. Like, just, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. Say it's why. Okay, my first job when I came back from up north and I came to Montreal, this company does like interactive displays and they do immersive things. So um, they do like they do stuff for MGM and Universal. So like, like, you go in and you enter a movie or stuff like that. These people do all the animation and all the graphics and whatever, and they put it up. And um, so it's in that artsy entertainment field. So one day the HR manager said that, okay, um, we're going to start a referral bonus and we'll give you something like whatever, 300-400 bucks for every person you refer to us. And if you refer someone who's BIPOC or LGBTQ, whatever, XMNOP, um, we'll give you an extra $200.
What?
Yeah. So there was myself and this Chinese guy who were the only two non-white people, and both of us individually went and spoke to the HR director and said, "That's racist. You can't do that. You know, that's just completely and utterly racist."
I'm so glad you did that.
You know,
The 2 BIPOC people went and said,
uh,
"This is wrong."
I mean,
Yeah.
I actually ended up leaving that job because I found something that I thought was better suited for me, and it wasn't because of that. Okay,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, just, whatever the Solzhenitsyn thing, like, don't let the lie enter through the world through me. Like,
Through
just,
me. Yeah.
yeah, just, speak your mind. be respectful. Like I could have gone in there and screaming and yelling and called her all kinds of names, but it's like, look, I don't think you realize, but and I think it helps that I knew my background because I think I've read more of this stuff than she has. It was the same thing. There was before COVID, I used to play cribbage at this pub near my house, and one night I'd gone out for a smoke, and I was speaking with like someone else. She was out there for a smoke, and then we got onto like U.S. politics, and then it comes out that she's queer and this and that. And I said, okay, explain. Then I just started talking to her, and I told her what I'd read from like Gail Rubin and Judith Butler
Mhm.
and some of the other stuff. And I said, okay, explain something to me. I said, how is Peter Buttigieg a man who sleeps with men, but he's not really a gay man because he doesn't embrace his queerness? I'm like, just explain that to me.
Yeah.
And she tried, and she started laughing. Now it could have been like I could have come at her like really
Angry.
aggressively or and
Right.
whatever, and it would have gone nowhere. But so it is possible to have these conversations. Yeah, some of these, if you get a big group like you're seeing at protest, no, like no, you're not going to have these conversations. But in encounter,
Individually.
yeah, individually, you can speak to a person and just if you know something about it, you know enough. That's why it's. I always tell people like Cynical Theories is a great book, the one by James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose, and they also did like the one that was kind of less academic, same book, but they took out a lot of the academic stuff called Social Injustice. They're really good books, and I recommend everyone read them. But I also recommend you read some of the stuff yourself. It's like have your understanding of it. Don't have an understanding of someone else's understanding of it,
Mhm.
and that's
Make sure
all.
you know it, you're not just repeating
Yeah,
phrases. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
exactly, which is
yeah,
what they do.
exactly.
Well,
Just like the Devoke say, do the work.
do the work. Well, Obaid, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today, and
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
I've got your link up here to SoundCloud where people can find your podcasts, Dangerous Speech, and then, if you guys appreciate the show, Adam Worrell in the chat's reminding you to affirm the identity of the like button by hitting it now. Thank you, Adam. And then I just wanted to show you this person in the chat because this is pretty interesting. Look at this, Obaid. Lindsay Garrett says, the first crack in my adherence to woke was the bizarre support for conservative Islam while they hated conservative Christianity. The left's love of Islamic fundamentalists makes no sense. Yeah,
Yeah, it makes no sense if you think logically, but if if you have Mobius logic, then yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's just Islam is brown. They support the brown people because brown people are oppressed
that's
compared
it.
to white people. That's all it is.
That's the only reason. Yep, you nailed it. Well, thank you, Obaid, and thank you
Well,
guys for hanging out with us on a Friday. Go and check out Obaid's podcast, Dangerous Speech, and we'll see you on Monday. Some couple people in the chat are plugging FNT. It is Friday, so Friday Night Tights is happening after this. Maybe I'll see you there. Take care.
thanks a lot.
Bye.